Happy Sunday, everyone. Welcome to Buddhist Center. It's so nice to see all of you today on Zoom and on the other platforms. And we get to talk about something that we all listened to for so many years from the holy being Khyentse Geshe Wandak Rinpoche, and that's the Lamrim Chemo, the great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment by Lama Tsongkhapa that encompasses everything that we really need to know in order to become enlightened. And how lucky are we when we see, how few people really get exposed to this nectar, this doctrine that, we take sometimes for granted because it's been in our lives for so many years, some of us decades. But when we meditate, we really think about how many people actually have access to these teachings. And then how many people who have access to these teachings are really interested in them. And we know how important they are because we all want to be happy. We all want to be free from suffering. And unfortunately, everyone is going about it in a way that doesn't produce the effects that they're, including myself, that I'm looking for. And thank goodness that we have some sort of affinity towards the Buddha Dharma, because the Buddha unraveled that problem for us so clearly at the first turning of the wheel of Dharma and showed us that anything within cyclic existence is a problem, is contaminated, is suffering, and that we shouldn't expect to get any kind of lasting happiness or freedom from suffering at all if we're going to be part of that process. And then the Buddha was so kind to show us exactly how to get out of that process, showed us how the process starts, since beginningless time because of this ignorance, this self-grasping ignorance, and how it can end, this samsara can end by getting rid of what since beginningless time has produced this experience of suffering and a cap on our happiness. And we're fortunate because we have this affinity for the teachings, for those things which will actually lead us to the results that everybody wants. We actually have the recipe that will produce that result, whereas there's billions of people who don't have that recipe or have access to that recipe and just don't have a karmic affinity for it. So really, if you're listening to this and you care at all about trying to figure out why it is that we can't seem to have the results that we're looking for, it means that there's some incredible amount of merit, some incredible karmic connection that you have to Buddhism that is allowing you to have this kind of interest. And when you investigate it, you will find that it's an interest that's worthwhile. It's not an interest that you should just have blind faith in because, hey, you showed up here, and if you're hearing this, you must need to. No, this is an interest that can develop over time by careful examination of what the Buddha taught. And then by carefully examining what the Buddha taught, you can discover for yourself what the Buddha is saying is truth. And you don't have to rely upon someone else's word, because this is something that is a truth, and a truth isn't, specialized to one individual. A truth can be discovered by anybody who investigates it well enough. And that truth that the Buddha came to teach us about is the truth that we don't have to suffer. The Buddha came to show us what binds us to cyclic existence, and the Buddha showed us then how to be freed from cyclic existence with those beautiful three turnings of the wheel of Dharma, where he taught to various being scopes in order to lead all of us eventually to the state of Buddhahood. So we're fortunate today. We're looking at Lama Tsongkhapa's text, the great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment, that so clearly elucidates all the stages in the order in which we practice them so that we can produce the results that our teachers have clearly produced within their continuums. If we want to, be more like His Holiness the Dalai Lama, if we want to be more like Khyentse Geshe Wandak Rinpoche, if we want to be more like Lama Zopa Rinpoche, it doesn't mean that we should get as close to stand next to them as possible, and that'll make us more like them. And it doesn't mean that, if we just, night and day say their name over and over and over again, that somehow some sort of transference is going to take place. No, if we like the qualities that these holy beings have and have had, that we've had in our lives, then we just merely need to do what they have done to be like that. And it isn't a formula that is special and they're keeping a secret. It's the formula that they came to the world to present to us. And this is the teachings for beings of three capacities, because we know that all Lord Buddha's teachings can fall into the categories. Lord Atisha said, understand there are beings of, there are persons of three capacities, small, medium, and great. I shall write clearly to identify their individual characteristics. So all of Lord Buddha's teachings fit into the teachings for beings of three capacities. And Great Treatise on the Stage of the Path to Enlightenment elucidates all of those pathways so clearly, and not only just kind of splatters it in front of us, shows us in a very kind and gentle way how to go from this stage to this stage, and how this stage relies upon the previous stage, and it's a cause and effect relationship that's there. And in order for us to actually have renunciation, we have to build up our understanding of the six realms, our understanding of the truth of suffering. And in order for us to get bodhicitta, we have to have generated renunciation within our mind. And in order for us to make either of those things matter, we really, really want to become a Buddha, or we really, really want to get out of cyclic existence. So we do all of these things like the first 5 perfections in order to make that possible. Nothing will happen except good results in cyclic existence if it's not coupled with the wisdom realizing emptiness. So we know that no matter what, we need to understand the nature of reality if we want to achieve even the results of the lesser vehicle, freedom from cyclic existence. And we have to have that coupled with renunciation. And if we want to achieve complete Buddhahood, we have to have that renunciation. We have to have the mind that aspires to enlightenment, which is bodhicitta, and a very, very calm, concentrated mind. And then that has to couple with the same wisdom realizing emptiness, the same exact object of negation as that of the person who's trying to just get to an individual liberation in the lesser vehicle. The wisdom is the same. The wind that kind of blows the being into an abiding nirvana or a non-abiding nirvana is a little different, depending on if it's just renunciation or renunciation serving as the foundation for bodhicitta. But we see that the wisdom realizing emptiness is indispensable. And to get the wisdom realizing emptiness, you have to have a concentration that's stable, and to really, really go dig deep enough into those things to want to do it. You're going to need to know the downfalls of cyclic existence to say, hey, I'm looking for something better. And that's what we're doing today. Today, we're talking about the first noble truth. We're in the Great Treatise on the Stage of the Path to Enlightenment that goes over the 6 types of suffering. We already went over the 8 types of suffering. So now we're taking a look at the 6 types of suffering. And then we know it gets into the 3 types of suffering. And all of this information serves as a foundation for us to get renunciation, serves as a foundation for us to then get bodhicitta. Because if we haven't even dreamed of our own suffering, Shantideva says, how could we even imagine someone else's? How would we even think about what kind of problem you have if we haven't come to understand, as I said a couple of weeks before, that we should see the person who just won the lottery and the person who is on the corner homeless as having suffering. And if we can't see that both of those individuals are trapped within the prison of cyclic existence, if we start to see, oh, that person is really, really set up, and that person is really having a hard time. If we see this discrepancy, we haven't realized the first noble truth. We haven't come to understand that anything within cyclic existence is salt water, and there is nothing satisfying, and all of it is just the suffering of change, which will turn into some sort of separation, deterioration, disintegration, something that will eventually lead to a movement from the elevated state of thing that we call happiness to a state of suffering. And that state of happiness is what actually causes us to feel worse, because it goes down a little bit, and it can go down a little bit because it's samsara. And that's the only reason it can go down a bit. And when there's no more samsara, it doesn't go down a bit, and the Buddhas get the bliss because of getting rid of the subtle stains of the self-cherishing attitude, and that bliss never goes down. There's never deterioration or disintegration of the levels of happiness. There is just momentary movement from bliss to bliss to bliss, momentary movement from lack of suffering to lack of suffering. And this is something that the Buddha and when we look at lack of suffering, even the arhats in the lesser vehicle possess, in dependence upon the cause and effect spiritual path we find in the Lamrim. So this is the information we're talking about today, and we're so fortunate that we have this to talk about, and that not only we're just talking about Buddhism in general. We've landed in the very precise tradition of, Buddha Shakyamuni, Kanjur, the 100, collections, and the Tanjur, the authentic Indian commentaries, the 213 collections, and massive amounts of Tibetan commentaries. And this is the tradition that we've landed in. We're so fortunate to have, because there's a lot of, even when we get to the truth of Buddha, there's a lot of, places we can land where there's not this incredible clarity that we can achieve. And without incredible clarity, there's no way to become a Buddha. There's no way to pray to Buddhahood. There's no way to have a Buddha transfer realizations. There's no way to stand next to the right Lama and have it just come over to you, or have them touch you on the head and have it come to you. These are all things that are ripening paths, that are faith, that are necessary for the collections of merit. But that you can do that until forever, and you will never, ever achieve nirvana. You will never achieve Buddhahood if you don't work on your own mind and do the operation on yourself. This is what we have to do. The Buddha said we have to do an operation on ourselves. I can only teach you the truth of suchness, and that's how you'll become liberated. So we're fortunate, and I just want to say thank you again for allowing me to talk about this information that will allow us to never have to suffer again, will allow us to achieve a complete reliability, bliss, and perfect wisdom, skillful means, love, and compassion, and power eventually, because we'll be able to actually know how to remove the afflictive obstructions and the obstructions to omniscience. And those are the two things that are our enemy. Those are the things that are in our mind that aren't the nature of our mind, but they're in there, that need to be removed. And once we no longer have afflictive obstructions, we don't have to suffer ever again, and we can be in nirvana. And once we no longer have the obstructions to omniscience, we're Buddha. So with that being said, this is the information that I'll be speaking about today. So now imagine that you bring all of the beings in the universe, all sentient beings here, as part of the bodhicitta field. In order to become a Buddha, we have to become bodhisattvas, and bodhisattvas work day and night for the needs of sentient beings and figure out day and night how to teach the truth of suchness to sentient beings. And Buddhas would figure out a way to simultaneously teach the truth of suchness to every single sentient being in the universe in their own individual way. Somehow, and has the capacity to do that when we look at the qualities of the Buddha's speech. So here we're putting imprints in our minds to be able to have those qualities of the Buddha's speech, have the qualities of the Buddha's omniscient mind to be able to find every sentient being in the universe and gather them here. By gathering them here for the Buddha can just go to exactly where they are and stay in one place, the Dharmakaya, and then go to everywhere that all of the sentient beings that need help are. And when I say that, we're thinking, oh, these just we have to then go back to the first noble truth, going to where the person who just won the lottery is to help them, going to where the Arya Bodhisattva is in the Upanishta, in the Pure Land, Upanishta Pure Land, where there are only Arya Bodhisattvas, and they're learning from the enjoyment body of the Buddha. The Buddha knows how to go there and make an enjoyment body to help those beings who are already superior bodhisattvas, who are already able to emanate bodies themselves. We will be able to, by doing practices like that, like this, become a being like that. And there's no other way to become a being who could emanate an enjoyment body and emanate an emanation body unless we created causes within our mental continuum to become that kind of being. So here, in a contrived way, fake it till you make it kind of way, we're pretending that we can bring every single sentient being in the universe here to be our guest, to be able to hear the truth of suchness, so that we in the future, have created a mental basis for the arisal of that bind of bodhicitta actually to occur, and for all of that work that we as bodhisattvas will do to actually be pushed by the winds of the causes we're creating right now. Those effects with the bodhisattva path, these emanation bodies that we read about and we think are someone else's, we should be thinking are the ones we will have by doing what we're doing now. And when we talk about, may I become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings, in that point, there's a lot. What are you saying? What are you saying I'm going to be able to do? If I were to become a Buddha, how would I work for their sake? Their sake. What would be their sake? How would I benefit them? When we look at the 7-point cause and effect for realizing the mind that aspires to enlightenment, I want to repay their kindness. I'm going to take it upon myself, the task of repaying their kindness, all sentient beings' kindness for having taken care of me in previous lives. I'm going to take on myself, the task of doing that. And when you say that, well, how could I then, they've taken care of me and made me happy. How could I make them happy? But we've studied the first noble truth. So we know that giving them a cupcake, handing them $20 isn't what will make them happy. We've studied the first noble truth. So we know that we have to bring sentient beings here to an occasion like this to really help them. So obviously, in the normal world, we have to then give $1 to someone who needs it. We have to work within conventional world of doing our best to pretend that we're, able to really know what others needs to the best of our ability. But we have to be able to recognize our handicaps, have to be able to recognize that we have limitations within our minds. We have limitations we don't really know how to help someone. We can kind of help someone have suffering of change in this life, if we're honest with ourselves. We can help them with that. We can help remove some suffering of suffering, but then that's kind of like just bringing them over to suffering of change a little. So we have to do our best to work within the reality that we can work with. We don't shut other sentient beings out because we say, oh, well, we don't know the best way to help them. We start practicing helping. So the actual engaged work that we do in our daily lives is the practicing of helping, just like leaving the imprints right now, pretending we're bringing the sentient beings here. And sooner or later, those two things will come together, where this helping we're doing in the world, where maybe we're, trying to help homeless or whatever we're doing, is helping social work we're doing in the world, and this kind of imaginary practice that we're doing now, our minds start to evolve and we start to become more capable. And when that capability becomes more, grand, then the work that we're doing with the people becomes more skillful, becomes better. But the only way that we would set a foundation for us to do better work later is to do good work now, to do better work later. So we're doing good work in our meditation now to do better work in our meditation later. Why is it only good work? Because I can only think of the sentient beings that I can kind of think of to bring here. And if my mind was more expansive, in a moment, I'd be able to think of thousands of generic images, thousands of memories, and eventually actually go directly, without just a memory and a generic image, directly to those beings through clairvoyance where they are, and know them as they sit in their room. But now I work with what I can work with, so I can eventually know them as they are when they sit in their room. So I don't mean to harp on the beginning of this, as I do quite a bit, but this is so important to understand that what we're doing right now, what we're doing right now is creating this mental basis, this kind of future of us throwing an enjoyment body to a pure land to teach Arya Bodhisattvas, throwing an emanation body to meet with someone like me to help teach me the truth of suchness, as Khyentse Geshe Wandak did. So if you really revere Khyentse Geshe Wandak, figure out how to realize what he realized so that you can affect a being like he affected me, like he affected you. We can't rely on others. The gift that our teachers give us is a gift to say, here, You now can become reliable. This is the gift. This is the Mahayana. The Mahayana is, I want to be reliable. And our teachers give us the gift. Now you go be reliable. How do I become reliable? By practicing the teachings for beings of three capacities in their order. Because if I go out of order and I think I can jump to compassion but not understand suffering, I don't understand the path at all. I don't understand how to practice. If I haven't meditated well on the first, second, third, fourth, if I don't understand the process, and I just want to jump to emptiness, scientists know a lot of things, but they don't cut the root of cyclic existence. There has to be a practice in there. There has to be everything working together to just cut down the self-cherishing attitude that's kind of driven by self-grasping ignorance. And there's got to be a process of, really, like we talked about, grinding the sesame seeds into tahini until it's a paste, no seeds left. And you have to just keep grinding and grinding and grinding. We see the stories of Tilo, Naropa. We see the story of Tilopa, and you can read about it. Sesame crusher. So imagine you bring all sentient beings here as your guest to hear what we're going to talk about. And I'm going to do the same and recite this from the Sanchi Molan, the prayer of noble conduct that we are reciting at some point to remember to bring all of the guests. But I feel like sometimes it's important to establish and sell you on the fact that this is a worthwhile venture, and it makes you meditate on, well, what would I bring sentient beings to be the guest of? How I invite people over my home for a parties sometimes. Why am I doing that? Oh, because I want everyone to have a merriment. I want everyone to have joy. Well, why am I inviting everyone here? Because I want them to have merriment. I want them to have joy. So Professor Jeffrey Hopkins says, always connect things to your own life. Think about when, the most wonderful time you had a house full of guests and you really treated them all so well. And they were all so full, and you found some of them sleeping because they were so content, and it made you feel so good. It made you feel so good to be able to bring some joy, some bit of peace, some bit of happiness, some togetherness, some companionship, some non-biased moments. That feeling, think about that kind of feeling and then invite sentient beings here. Think about inviting those people that you loved and how that experience was just like that, just lovely, grand event that you had, and cherish it like that and say, wow, imagine if I could have brought, everyone, and then, everyone would be content forever. I'm going to bring them somewhere where I can make them all just, that fell asleep from a food coma on the couch. There's a bit of samsaric contentment. If you could just have that, whatever that is, that blip of contentment, just forever. That's what I'm bringing hell, hungry ghost, animal, human demigods, and gods here to have. That's what I'm doing. I'm trying to get them all to think about when we read about the hell realms and we think about the 8 hot hells, 8 cold hells, 4 surrounding hells. Imagine if they could be laying on the couch with a food coma, not in that horrible state, or the hungry ghosts who can't even get, according to the scripture, their food's mouth's the size of pinholes, and the belly's the size of mountains, and throats that are in knots. Imagine if there is a being like that who can't even get the food into their mouth. Think about beings like this, and think about bringing them here, and you could give them that joy like when you gathered, but permanently. And the animals, we see the animals just constantly fearful of being eaten alive, constantly having to be, our slaves in some way or another. Freezing to death soon here, outside cold, quickly making nests, trying to get enough, the hummingbirds trying to get enough sugar so that they can fly somewhere warmer so they don't die. And all they do is go sugar to sugar to sugar. And if they don't get enough sugar, they just fall down and die because they flap so fast. Think about that. If you could just give them like, okay, hummingbird, food coma forever, just think about that. Obviously, Buddhahood's not that. It's so much better. It's so much more. But we have to think about what we can feel when we do our practice. And if it doesn't feel like something, you're just stacking information and it's kind of pretend land. But if it feels like something, it's got so much more connectivity to it. Thinking about all beings being your guests and meditating right on the Lam Rim and understanding equanimity and friends, enemies, and neutrals. Now, if you could establish everybody as someone you'd equally want to benefit, because that's where you end up before you even meditate on bodhicitta. It's the pre-step. Everybody talks bodhicitta big time. Pre-step gets you to, I would equally be willing to benefit everyone. Okay, so now everyone is all 6 realms of cyclic existence. I'm equally willing to benefit all of them. Now think about the party where you invited your friends and you were so pleased that everybody was so happy and it went so well. Nobody fought. There was no bias. There's no argument. It was just like a perfect event. Like there's some of them happen sometimes, just that kind of just wonderful occasion. That's what we're inviting beings to, but we're inviting beings to a reliable one. So you're equally want to benefit them. So you have every being in your mind as whoever your guests were, whoever those guests were. You're thinking of every being like that. And now you're thinking, oh, I've brought them somewhere so that they can have freedom from suffering forever and have bliss forever. Wow. That's somewhere to bring people. That's somewhere to bring beings. Laike dan lu dan no jinge dribun da dan mi ye ke dan dan ro wa gun ji da nan ji tsamba dan je ke du da ji ji den do. In the language of the gods, nagas, and yaksas, in the language of demons and of humans too, and however many kinds of speech there may be, I shall proclaim the Dharma in the language of all. Now we'll just quickly get into the 7-point Vairocana posture. This is a great posture to listen to the teaching in, even because it says that it's a posture that allows everything to kind of align the way that it, should. It allows you to sit for long periods of time when we look at the benefits of the posture, and it allows your mind to get into the clearest state, or at least a state of assessment where you can see how it's doing. You've done everything physically you can now to do an assessment on your mind. And then, of course, the teachings tell us how to, fix problems that are in there. So we're not here to do that right now. We're here to just to get into the 7-point Vairocana posture and just all of us imagining all sentient beings have now gotten into this 7-point Vairocana posture. I don't know how an octopus does it. I was just thinking about that. But, just imagining that every being somehow just gets into this 7-point Vairocana posture. And that you're leading them and inspiring them by this posture. And just imagine that everybody begins to settle their mind down by following the instructions of breathing in and breathing out and counting the breath. So today, that's all we're going to do. We're not going to do any other, kind of objects. We're just going to imagine now we've turned ourselves towards just our mind. Every other sentient being is doing their own meditation. Meditation is done with the mental consciousness. It's not done with the sense consciousness. When we look at calm abiding, we're calming our mind. We're creating a peace. What is that peace? We're pacifying external distraction, and we're abiding on an internal object. Here, we're telling our mind what to do, and we're going to abide on our mind, just focusing on the breathing in and out and the counting, just allowing our mental consciousness to focus on that. So we imagine that all sentient beings are joining us in this practice, and let us just sit with this kind of calming down of our mind while we know that we're trying to keep a kind of spy there, an introspection there, to make sure that the focal object of breathing in and out and the counting isn't being corrupted by excitement, distraction, mind wandering off, going somewhere other than breathing in and out and counting, or another kind of problem, negativity that can come into what we're trying to do. The spy could catch, and that's a laxity, a sleepiness, a lethargy, a darkening that can occur. And it's so easy to mistake for kind of a blissful state of meditation. So the spy in our mind is going to make sure that mindfulness is doing its job. Mindfulness is holding the object, breathing in and out, and the counting. So let's do that for a moment. Now that we've calmed our minds down just a bit and we've gotten rid of some of the discursiveness, busyness in our mind, now imagine that the merit field starts to fill in, beginning with Buddha Shakyamuni. You start to see all the holy beings assembling in the space in front of you. We've already assembled a bodhicitta field. Now imagine that the merit field begins to fill in the space in front of you, all the beings that you consider holy enlightened beings. Imagining Buddha Shakyamuni and His Holiness the Dalai Lama on a jeweled encrusted throne supported by snow lions, so steady and firm. Imagining Khenser Geshe Wandak on a beautiful lotus, and Geshe Lotsan Gompo on a beautiful lotus, Dema Locho Rinpoche on a beautiful lotus. Imagining Khenser Lobsan Gyatso on a beautiful lotus. Imagining Lama Zopa Rinpoche on a beautiful lotus. All of these holy beings are so connected to and so fortunate. Imagining Geshe Dorje Damdu, now again imagining pure, solid thrones. Geshe Dorje Damdu, Umzala Geshe Aga, Geshe Malatenzin Ladran, Jeffrey Hopkins, Ani Tupten Chodron, Chado Rinpoche. All of these beings that are in our world, we're so fortunate they're here. May they remain. May their thrones be remaining Vajra strong. And any other beings, any other lamas who you're connected to, you consider an enlightened being. Imagine they're sitting on a throne that's immovable. Now imagine the beings of the extensive deeds lineage passed down from Buddha Shakyamuni to Maitreya and Asanga, and Basu Bandhu, and Dignaga and Dharmakirti and Vimuktasena and Haribhadra and Shakyaprabha, Gunaprabha, Sir Limpa, Atisha, imagining these holy beings, imagining the beings of the profound view lineage passed down from Buddha Shakyamuni to Manjushri and Nagarjuna and Buddha Palita and Aryadeva and Shantideva, Chandrakirti. All of these beings were so fortunate that they presented the Madhyamaka Prasangika view, and the other beings of the profound view lineage, Baba Vega and Buddha, Baba Vega and Chandrarashita and Kamalashila. We're so fortunate. And again, imagining Lama Atisha and Salimpa. Now imagining the beings of the lineage of blessing, Saraha, Matripa, Tilo, Naro, Lotsawa, Marpa, Milarepa, Gampopa. And we've been looking at Gampopa's beautiful jeweled ornament for realization, liberation on Thursday nights. Looking at this beautiful section. Now imagining Lord Atisha passing down the Lamrim lineage to Drontompa and the three old Kadampa lineages. All the holy beings of the Nyingma, Padmasambhava, Sakya, the Satya Kunganimpo, and Sakya Pandita, the Kaju, all the Kaju, incredible Kaju masters, Gampo, and so forth, and all the Karmapas, imagining the Galupa lineage, Lama Tsongkhapa, Kirtapje, Jelsipje, going to Jimmy Wambo, Pension Sonandrapa, the Jayan Sheba, Basu Chuji Jetson, Jayan Rilpi Dorje, the seventh Dalai Lama, the Jitsumba, Purvajok, all of these holy lamas who've passed down the tradition and clarified things so much. We're so fortunate that Khenso Geshe Wandak and these other lamas have been so well versed in these textbooks and the authors, and Rinpoche particularly presenting us with Panchen Sonandrapa and Jeffrey Hopkins being so kind to make sure the world understands Jayan Sheba. And may we all pray for Jeffrey Hopkins' obstacles to his longevity and his peace be removed. We're so fortunate that beings like Jeffrey Hopkins are in our world, as Geshe Dorje Damdu said, allowing us to understand these very, very complex teachings because they put in so much effort and cared so much, had so much compassion for sentient beings who dwell in the state of ignorance like myself. Imagining the highest Yoga Tantra deities, performance Tantra deities, action Tantra deities, all of the 35 Buddhas, imagining all of the protector deities now are in the space in front of you. Now we know every being in the universe is here. We invited sentient beings, and we know why. We invited the merit field because we know we need the truth of suchness. These are the beings who've presented exactly what we need to know. We've invited them all here to this beautiful process to help us, to bless us. We make supplications to them that we can be able to understand these teachings more clearly, that everything that's said today can actually be retained in our minds. We make supplications to the merit field. May we please be able to have these teachings change the way that we think, become less childish, become more other cherishing, become wiser. We supplicate the merit field as a group, imagining that all of us, everyone you've invited to this party, everyone that you've invited to this teaching to hear the truth of suchness is making a supplication to all of the enlightened beings to please, please help us to understand this. Intervene in our lives in any way that you can so that we can move closer to your state, so that we can become part of the merit field. Not so that we can forever rely upon the merit field, so that we can then be in the merit field, so that then we can be the reliable guides that you all are, those reliable guides that have removed the afflictive obstructions and the obstructions to omniscience. We make supplications that we learn today more about how to do that, how to become just like them. And that is so powerful when we connect to the teachings and taste the teachings like this. And it's not just some kind of just dull thing that we feel we have to do because of some commitment. It's something we feel that we have to do because it brings us more joy than anything in the world, because we're connecting to it in a real way. Now with that, we'll read the Heart Sutra, and I've allowed screen sharing. And as we know, the Heart Sutra explicitly explains the Madhyamaka Prasangika view, the final view of emptiness that Nagarjuna was so kind to express. Chandrakirti was so kind to clarify. Tsongkhapa was so kind to clarify even more. And we're so fortunate that we have these texts in English, in Tibetan, in other forms in our world to be able to understand what this Heart Sutra means, to understand what the non-affirming negative means, the lack of inherent existence of all phenomena. All phenomena are empty of nature. Not just some, all. Empty of nature, empty of having some sort of establishment by way of their own character, empty of objective existence, empty of existing right in their object. self of person, self of phenomena, all empty of intrinsic existence, objective existence, inherent existence, existing by way of its own character, existing from its own side, independence. All of these things are synonyms. And we're so fortunate to have clarification about what that means. And then also implicitly, this talks about the 5 paths: the path of accumulation, the path of preparation, the path of seeing, the path of meditation, and the path of no more learning. And specifically the 5 Mahayana paths, which begin with when we look at for regular, when we look at it, when we look at it in terms of the Mahayana, the path of accumulation begins when a being gets bodhicitta and becomes a bodhisattva. And then you can study those 5 paths. We won't go into them today. Maybe you have studied those 5 paths, but it's necessary to know what they are and what you need to do on them once you get bodhicitta. So that's a big goal. You have to get renunciation first. But once you get that, you're going to need to know what Teata Om Gate, path of accumulation, Gate, path of preparation, Paragate, path of seeing, Parasamgati, path of meditation, and Bodhisoha, the Buddhahood, is going to require to have happen. So the Bodhisoha needs the Gate, Paragate, Parasamgate to happen. And you need to know as a practitioner what those stages are so that you can do them. Not so that you can stack information up and be the wisest, smartest person in the room and really be able to impress people with your knowledge. It's so that you can do them, so that you can do Gate, Paragate, and Parasamgate. So you do it, not someone else, not so someone else did, not so that you can talk about what they did. It's so that you do it. You do Gate, Paragate, Parasamgate. You do meditation on emptiness. You find out what the non-affirming negative is. You find out what all the hubbub is about emptiness, and why, if it's just things are empty because they dependently originate, is it so hard to figure out for super smart people, and they write volumes and volumes and volumes about it. If that's the case, chances are I am missing something about emptiness. And the more and more I study about emptiness and the differentiation between tenets, I'm finding that there is a really much more to know. And I encourage you all to, read Meditation on Emptiness by Jeffrey Hopkins. And if it's just leave that up. The Heart Sutra, fine. If it's just an easy read, then I commend you. But if there's parts of it that seem like they're stumbling by parts that don't seem to make sense, then you don't have the view. And that's scary, because we know the only liberating path, the only way to become free is to have the view. The Heart Sutra, the Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge. Thus have I heard once the Blessed One was dwelling in Rajagriha at Vulture Peak Mountain, together with a great gathering of Sangha monks and a great gathering of Sangha Bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One entered the Samadhi that expresses the Dharma called profound illumination. At the same time, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, while practicing the profound Prajaparamita, saw in this way, he saw the 5 skandhas to be empty of nature. Then, through the power of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, how should a son or daughter of noble family train who wishes to practice a profound Prajaparamita? Addressed in this way, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, said to Venerable Shariputra, O Shariputra, a son or daughter of noble family who wishes to practice a profound Prajaparamita should see in this way, seeing the 5 skandhas to be empty of nature. Form is emptiness, emptiness also is form, emptiness is no other than form, form is no other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, perception, formation, and consciousness are emptiness. Thus, Shariputra, all dharmas are emptiness. There are no characteristics, there is no birth and no cessation. There is no impurity and no purity, there is no decrease and no increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no perception, no formation, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch, no dharmas, no eye dhatu, no mind dhatu, no dhatu of dharmas. No kind conscious dhatu, no ignorance, no ignorance up to old age and death, no end of old age and death, no suffering, no origin of suffering, no station of suffering, no path, no wisdom, no attainment, no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since the Bodhisattvas have no attainment, they abide by means of Prajaparamita. Since there is no obscuration of mind, there is no fear. They transcend falsity and attain complete nirvana. All the Buddhas of 3 times by means of Prajaparamita, fully awakened to unsurpassable, true, complete enlightenment. Therefore, the great mantra of Prajaparamita, the mantra of great insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequaled mantra, the mantra that calms all suffering, should be known as true, since there is no deception. Prajaparamita mantra is said in this way: Teata Om Gate Gate Paragate Parasangati Buddhisoa. Teta Om Gate Gate Paragate Parasangati Buddhisoa. Teta Om Gate Gate Paragate Parasangati Buddhisoa. Teta Om Gate gati gati paragati parasangati buddhisoha teta om gati gati paragati parasangati buddhisoha. Thus Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound Raja Paramita. Then the Blessed One rose from that samadhi and praised noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, saying, Good, good, O son and noble family. Thus it is, O son and noble family, thus it is. One should practice the profound Prajaparamita just as you have taught, and all the Tathagatas will rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, Venerable Shariputra and noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, that whole assembly in the world, with its gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, rejoiced and praised the words of the Blessed One. And we see here, somehow the Buddha got a whole bunch of people to hear this. It says the whole assembly in the world with its gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas rejoiced and praised the words of the Blessed One. So here we again are seeing what we'll be able to do. So we're always thinking, oh, the whole world will rejoice and praise our words if we could just get it right. Agasamara Dashandarazamara Ave, Atong, Gate Gate, Paragate, Parasangate, Buddhizo, Papa Gunchusunchi, Kayedim Doji, Lobadoji, Mebadoji, Shevadoji, Jagi Baji Medebeja Daji, Goyes, Oh, Hagerin, Donjaji, Wada, Medun, Bejan, Danda, Wada, Tomba, Dunjin, Bonzon, Zonjoji, Dashi de Jande Dadele Show. Make a mandala offering as request for teaching. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this is a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. Holy Lamas High, wrap the sky of your Dharma bodies in massive clouds of knowledge and love, and let them pour upon the earth of your disciples as we are ready, a shower of rain, the teachings deep and wide. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. Sanje Chedan Zeji Janan La Janje Badu Danyi Jazuji Dagi Jiji Bezananji Jola Benji Sanje Jubasho. This is the refuge and bodhicitta prayer for anybody who's listening and isn't used to this. Zanye Jadan Zeji Janan La Janje Badu Danyi Jazuji Dagi Jiji Bezananji Jola Benji Sanje Jubasho. Sanye Jadan Zeji Janan La Janju Badu Danyi Jazuji Dagi Juje Jibe Sonanji Jola Benche Sanye Juba Sho. And just so you know, I wasn't speaking in tongues. It says I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the merit I create by teaching the Dharma, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. So I'm saying basically the reason that I'm going for refuge to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, is because I feel that this is what I need to do in order to become a Buddha. So this is why I'm going for refuge, and this makes it a Mahayana refuge, is by saying I'm going for refuge to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha to become a Buddha. So this is by saying, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. This is bodhicitta. May I become a Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. So we see embedded within this refuge prayer, the Mahayana ideal, bodhicitta. May I become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. So why am I going for refuge to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha? Because the Buddha has achieved a freedom from the afflictive obstructions and the obstructions to omniscience. So the Buddha knows how to do it. You know, the Dharma is the cessation and true paths, really, within the minds of superior beings. But we can say that what they have realized there, they've put on paper. We can say that the Dharma is then that which we can read to achieve those true paths and true cessations. So we hold the Dharma, you know, so that we are able to get rid of the, you know, subtle self-cherishing attitude and self-grasping ignorance that make us become a Buddha. And then the Sangha are those Arya beings, those Arya Bodhisattvas, Arya beings, but in here, Arya Bodhisattvas as well, who've seen emptiness as Bodhisattvas, that are our guides. to becoming Buddhas, because this is a Mahayana refuge. So it's not to say all Aryas aren't fantastic, but here, these are Arya Bodhisattvas that we're really relying on, because those are the ones teaching on the Mahayana. Those are one of the qualities of where the Arya Bodhisattvas hang out in the Pure Land, is that the Buddha only teaches Mahayana. The Buddha only teaches how to become a Buddha. There are no other teachings being given than Mahayana teachings in the Upanishad Pure Land, in this Pure Land where the Bodhisattvas are. So just a little aside, it's just through the merit I create by teaching the Dharma, you would say listening to the Dharma, may I attain Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. So there's two things going on here. I'm going for refuge so that I can become a Buddha. And this thing that I'm doing that's really good, make sure that it gets directed towards me becoming a Buddha. So that's basically what this refuge prayer is about. And if you're attached to this life, you're not a spiritual practitioner. If you're attached to samsara, you have no renunciation. If you're attached to your own self-interest, you have no bodhicitta. And if there is grasping, you do not have the view. So it's really important to establish what is the Buddha, what is the Dharma, what is the Sangha, why would I go for refuge, and how do I make that a refuge that means that I'm being protected in a way that will protect me not only from suffering, but protect me from not being perfect. And that's a strange thing to think about, right? You need the Arya Bodhisattva wants to be free from, be unbound from the obstructions to omniscience, wants to become the most reliable guide in the universe. So right now, though, we're in the medium scope section of the Lam Rim, which deals with the Four Noble Truths, which is something that all Buddhist traditions pretty much agree upon is the universal. We all agree the Buddha taught that the Four Noble Truths, and there's some disagreement starts whether, in some of the Theravadan tradition, however you would like to label the lesser vehicle traditions, some of those traditions don't agree that the Mahayana is something that was the, pronouncement of Buddha. Some do, but some don't believe that the Mahayana is actually the teaching of the Buddha. They don't believe it's the teaching of the Buddha. They say it's just some other Dharma that isn't the Dharma of the Buddha. But everyone pretty much concurs on the Four Noble Truths. And that's what we find presented when we get to the medium scope section of the Lam Rim, the teaching shared in common with beings of medium capacity. We find the presentation on the Four Noble Truths. In the small scope section, we found the presentation on the basics. We found the presentation of, hey, you need a teacher, you got a good life, this life's going to end, and you could go to the lower realms, and look how bad the lower realms are, and you should go for refuge and learn about how to not go to the lower realms. But then now we're in like a little more of like grown-ups. All right, like let the children leave the room now. Now we have to let everyone know that all that stuff you've been trying to kind of shoot for in the previous section, if all children leave the room, all that stuff we told you about Santa Claus and everything, we have to tell you about the higher realms not being so great either. So each of these scopes start to, let you in on a little more of what you need to know to become perfect. And this scope doesn't talk, obviously the Lam Rim Chemo is all integrated, but if we're looking at it in pure, now we're on the Four Noble Truths, we're finding it in graduated stages of, okay, now I'm recognizing my suffering and really, really knowing it well so that I could actually have compassion. So that when I start to do meditation on bodhicitta and start to go through all those lovely stages, that I have something real meaty and emotion invoking to bring to the table in terms of what I feel is going on with others, because I've exhausted all of the things that are going on with me now I can relate to, that can go on with me. So all of the things that can go on with me that I'm meditating on in this first noble truth are things that are going on with sentient beings right now and that have gone on with me before. So I'm learning about me because it's easier, because I like me the most. It's easiest for me to deal with me when I get down to it. When I see somebody, punched in the face, it certainly isn't as startling as if you punched me in the face. So think of it in those terms. So it's easier for me to really understand everything that could happen to me and then start to think about, wow, I got to get out of this problem. And then I can look at any being in the universe and know what they're experiencing right now, potentially. Every type of thing. If I've meditated on a hell, hungry ghost animal, I can really know exactly what those beings are experiencing right at this moment, right now. And that I will be and have if I don't get my act together. So that is a little different when you can start to relate to others because you know it so well for yourself, about yourself. If you were an expert driver, you knew everything. Now you should drive. You teach people to drive, every single nuance that you need to know about the road. Now you can really, really take somebody from who's never even sat in a car all the way to the point of getting a driver's license. This is current. I'm talking with someone about doing this right now. So you could really do that. So anyway, not to get off track, but these teachings that we learn about in the medium scope on the Four Noble Truths and the truth of suffering and, the death and impermanence are what we then bring to the table with our bodhicitta practice. Then it's like Shanti Deva's quote about, if you haven't really thought about yourself, come on, guys. Really, if I'm like, just putting Shanti Deva into simple terms, like, really, you don't even know what suffering is. And now you say you have compassion for all sentient beings. Come on. And now you're saying you're going to become a Buddha for everyone. And you don't even know what a Buddha is. Really? You don't even know what, first of all, an arhat in the lesser vehicle is trying to get rid of. And you're saying you want to become a Buddha? You don't even know. Really, guys, that's what Shanti Deva is saying in the Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life. So we've been looking at the 8 sufferings, and now we're looking at the 6 sufferings. And I think that it's really helpful because once we get into the 6 sufferings, it starts to kind of force us to look at previous lives and future lives. It forces us to look at Dharmakirti's reasoning in the 2nd chapter about, well, then wait a minute. I have a previous life of suffering. I've experienced these things and I can experience them in the future. I'm going to need to posit past and future lives if I'm going to get anywhere in chapter 18 of the Lamrim Chemo. If I'm going to read Nagarjuna's letter to a friend, and if I'm going to read Sakya Rendawa's commentary on it, in this section on the 6 sufferings, where they're presented, there's a 7th that's presented, which is all the different realms of suffering. But if I'm going to, be able to meditate on this so that I could eventually, help beings who are having problems like this, I'm going to need to know what they are. I'm going to have to do what the Buddha said. The Buddha said 12 things about at the first turning of the wheel of the Dharma. This is a superior truth of suffering, origin, cessation, and path. And then the Buddha said, suffering needs to be identified. So that's what we're doing. So we're identifying exactly what suffering is in its coarse level and in its subtle level. And then the most subtle level, which is the mastermind beyond all of it, which is the pervasive compounded suffering that's inescapable if you're in cyclic existence. So we have to know what Dharmakirti is talking about in the 2nd chapter in order to establish beginningless lives and establish that this moment's consciousness comes from a previous moment's consciousness, and that this consciousness, there's a mental consciousness and sense consciousness, and the mind and the body work with each other, but they aren't one. And that the mind goes forward. We have to be able to establish this and come up with this with reasoning. And the 2nd chapter also establishes omniscience, establishes Buddhahood, using all of this logic. So if we say we want to become a Buddha, we have to be able to establish that Buddhahood is possible. by establishing that we have this mental consciousness that moves forward. And we have this mental consciousness that's in the nature of clear light and unsullied, that these stains are adventitious. These things just need to be removed, and we haven't removed them. And since beginningless time, we've had this self-grasping ignorance. And the self-grasping ignorance is this afflictive obstruction that keeps us from having a freedom from suffering. We've just had this. We have to be able to establish that this omniscience is possible, that this distillation of our mind is possible, that the adventitious stains can be removed. There's a natural purity of our mind that we have right now that's the same exact natural purity that the Buddha's mind has right now. We have to be able to establish this with logic and reasoning to then really say, oh, I go for refuge until I'm enlightened. Forever, I'm going to put myself under the care of Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha forever. Come on. If we don't really establish with logic and reasoning what a Buddha is, how we could become a Buddha, that a mental consciousness could evolve. Mental consciousness isn't in the nature of all of these stains, but the mental consciousness needs some stuff put in. It needs to have the collection of merit and wisdom. We can say, oh, it just doesn't have need anything added. It needs things removed, but that's actually not true. Because the removal is adding. It's a maturation. It's a maturity. It's not a maturity that's present, that there's an immaturity we're removing. It's a maturation. That's our Buddha, the maturing Buddha nature. We have the natural Buddha nature, which is the emptiness of our mind. It's the same nature of the Buddha's mind. But this maturing Buddha nature, this potential, this proliferating Buddha nature is the potential for our mind to evolve into a Buddha. So it makes sense for us to say, I go for refuge until I'm a Buddha, because we establish that that maturation is possible because these stains that we have are adventitious. And if that maturation is possible and that this mind will just keep going if the stains are left in it, well, what do these stains make happen? They make the 8, 6, and 3 types of suffering happen. So we have to be convinced that we don't like what these stains make happen. We have to be thoroughly convinced of this. We see that Arya Nagarjuna said that the ceasing of karma and afflictions is nirvana. Karma and afflictions arise from conceptuality, that arise from elaboration. Elaboration ceases in emptiness. We have to see that from the self-grasping ignorance, we suddenly have this conceptuality, this inappropriate attention that exaggerates and overvalues everything and then propels us into afflictions, propels us into attachment and hatred and ignorance and pride and jealousy and discursiveness. And then from there, we're then thrown into contaminated actions within cyclic existence that give rise to concordant results, give rise to project things, and then there's arisals, and they are actualized things that are actualized within the 12 links of dependent origination. And over and over and over, as Chandrakirti says, we turn like buckets on a water wheel through cyclic existence because of grasping at I and mine. So we have to establish this Buddhahood is possible, and we have previous lives and we have future lives. And what is not Buddhahood? What is sentient being? What is the opposite of a foe destroyer? What is samsara? So we have to establish what the problem is that we want to get out of if we're going to really, really want to get out of it. And if we want to help others get out of it, we need to know their problem. The only way we can know their problem is if we know our whole problem. So here we see the 6 types of suffering are the fault of uncertainty that we talked about, where we don't know from life to life. There's no certainty if we're going to go to the high, to the low. We have all of these beginningless imprints that from ignorance and then action we've put into our mind, into a consciousness that now has all of this potential for experience. And since beginningless time, we've been doing this. And every moment we've been acting and reacting, we've been planting these seeds that are going to eventually give rise into some sort of existence. So this uncertainty is that none of these things all match up the way we want them to. We want to feel like, okay, that's fine if I have future lives, but I'm going to take my kids with me. I'm going to take my husband with me. I'm going to take my grandfather with me. But then just think about this, my father had a father who had a father. If everyone's thinking like this, we can't all possibly show up with all of, it just, even math, like if you are feeling good about, future lives, you feel like, okay, well, I'll see you next time. The point that the Buddha is making here is that not necessarily and probably not, don't feel so good about it. Don't feel great about rebirth. Don't say stupid things like, I hope I'm a butterfly, like that's the lower realm of cyclic existence. That's pure suffering, pure night and day, not a good time. It looks to you as attractive because you haven't studied the Lam Rim. But if you studied the Lam Rim, as a great Serame Khenser said, you'll look outside and instead of saying, oh, wonderful, the robins are here, you'll say, oh my, the robins are here. Those poor worms are going to be eaten alive and decapitated. You'll start to see these beautiful birds who eat beings alive and are cold and are not what you think of them as. To recognize that no, samsara is a mess. Samsara is disgusting. The lower realms are disgusting. This is something that I'm repulsed by. I don't want to leave anything in my mind that says, yeah, I want that. Careful. Pabunka Rinpoche says, don't get too close and with your, even animals and saying, oh, they're so cute and cuddly, because you're leaving imprints in your mind as to have an affinity for that kind of existence. So always keep everything in perspective. No, you're always creating a new movie for later. A new thing you're going to think isn't a movie. Going to believe it's as solid as I believe everything is around me, but it's no more than a movie. But we are every moment making a new reel to project onto a screen of parts. We're making it every moment. So just whatever you're putting in your mind, be so careful, because that is what is going to be your future experience. That's going to be your future way of thinking. There's the habituation, that kind of karma that's a result of habituation. You've habituated your mind to feel a certain way about certain things, accepted certain things that maybe aren't acceptable, but you accepted them. Now you're living in unacceptability, and you don't even know they're not acceptable anymore. At least now you had a line of demarcation. You were like, that's not acceptable, but I'll do it. I'll engage in it. Whereas that kind of habituation in a future life makes you not even have a line between right and wrong because of the power of magnification of karma. When we start to meditate and look at the Lam Rim the way it was meant to look at, it should make you, for a moment, and then have a sense of freedom and ease. So this is the most important part to understand, that just angry at samsara is aversion. That's not renunciation. Renunciation is a joyful state seeking freedom day and night. It sounds like day and night seeking transcendent liberation. It only sounds like that to us because we haven't thought about it well enough. We haven't thought about the first noble truth well enough. The word renunciation for someone who has it is like nectar, is like bliss, is like, yeah, I don't have it, but I can see as I study more and as more of this means more in the moments of my day, how those moments where I'm buying into this really are jazzed up. And then when I sneak back into the other things that I used to buy into more often than not, whatever, everybody's got their thing. Jeffrey Hopkins in the beginning of Remembering Mama or Identifying Mama says, you take, your pick. He's talking about pizza and biting into a pizza. He goes, and then he's talking about buying a TV. And he goes, you fill in your crazy, whatever your own crazy is, So anyway, we're really fortunate that we have these teachings that can start to make us align our minds with more realistic ways of thinking. and align our minds with, we normally thought in a way and have since beginningless time, most of the time. Sometimes, obviously, we didn't, because we're here today. Results are concordant with causes, and you're hearing a pure Dharma today, as pure as I can speak it. I'm speaking it from the Lam Rim, so I can say that. So you've created some really good causes and conditions to be here today. And you can then make it so you never have to be anywhere else again, but a place where there's never suffering and there's only bliss and reliability. So that's the nectar here. So this uncertainty of cyclic existence kind of makes it so you don't want to have this kind of affinity for the things around. As you see, it's this uncertainty, and the relationships are so uncertain, and you start to kind of loosen this idea. Like, you see the people you love around you, and you're like, oh, I will stay together, and we'll practice together. And this part makes you realize that samsara really stinks, because that's not true. It may be. That's very hidden phenomena kind of stuff that the omniscient mind Buddhas could figure out the math on. But chances are, even though we've all practiced together, next life, I mean, that means that all of us would have had to, on our deathbed, made some exact aspiration with all the names, whoever they are, to be connected. And then the person that we want to be connected to will have had to have, on their deathbed, you know, it just starts to really become untenable. And then, are you then okay with if you're in hell together? Because on their deathbed, they thought of you, but then, you know, also had a bad life of kind of non-virtue. And for whatever reason, you know, 15 years ago, non-virtue is what just popped into their mind at that moment when they thought of you. So that non-virtue throws you into the hell realm, throws that person into a hell realm. It's that simple. It's one projecting karma that happens at the time of death that decides your next birth. One projecting karma, may I repeat. All the other, bunch of other karmas fill in details, make all this. But at the time of death, there's one thing that links in, and then you're thrust into a realm. One karma. Whatever is there, whatever your mind is, and it says whatever you're most familiar with, you know, is what kind of comes up, you know, or what you did earlier. You can look in the Lam Rim. It's one karma. You got one loop. You got one hole. The uncertainty. When we talk about uncertainty, the Buddha really, really meant it. Beginningless lives, all kinds of karma. Think about 80 years, 60 years, 50 years of things you've done every moment. Something in there. If you've done something a lot more than other things, that's what's going to happen. But something in there is going to throw you into another life. Imagine if that's true, what are the chances you're going to see your loved ones? And do you want to go where they're going? Are you sure? You sure they're ready? Are you 100%? Are you sure? This is Lam Rim. This is the Lam Rim. This is the reality of the Lam Rim. It doesn't sound like the Lam Rim you want to hear. You know, I could do that for y'all. I could make this Sundays and Thursdays just absolute, everybody could leave like it smells like roses, but I just refuse to short sell, like, you know, I'm not trying to like build something here. I'm trying to help you become Buddha. I don't care if, you know, if 1 million people could get it, that'd be fantastic. But I know the effect of one person being affected by a lama. I know what can happen when a teacher comes and presents the truth, because it happened to me. So I'm not caring so much about massive amounts of, I've got to talk about the psychology of making yourself a happier person today. I don't have to do that. That's not my aim. I'm not looking to do that. Today sucks. I'm looking to make it so that you never have anything that sucks ever again. Because that's what Rinpoche gave to me, a gift to know that this life's cooked. This life's cooked. And it's time to work on some sort of spiritual advancement if we're looking to evolve. All right. It's funny. I'm looking at the Facebook feed. And if anybody's wondering, there is a fly walking around on the video, on the camera part. It was going like making all of these strange pictures on the screen. And I was thinking to myself, how is this happening? And there was a fly dancing on the camera lens that I'm then seeing myself on. And I'm seeing, so you have to just forgive my momentary distraction. I was like, what is going on the video over there? But anyway, so, I know we're out of time, but I wanted to, talk today really about feeling these teachings. And again, get everyone to pray for Professor Jeffrey Hopkins, Genla, I know him, Gennenden Jambel Drapala. He's quite ill right now, but there's some procedures, there's some chants, and the more moments a holy being is in the world, the more we benefit, because Betsy Napper said when he's so weak, even getting up, and she sees him in there just at his computer trying to do anything, and then he just gets exhausted and has to leave. But he sent out, he sent out an email about work. So just please pray that beings who care night and day about us understanding the Dharma more, he's working on translations of some highly complex stuff. Please pray that he can continue to do that, because it's not stuff I can translate. So don't look at me. So please pray for Gennenda Jambel Drapala, that Jeffrey Hopkins. I really would appreciate that if everybody would. If you're attached to this life, you're not a spiritual practitioner. If you're attached to samsara, you have no renunciation. If you're attached to your own self-interest, you have no bodhicitta. If there is grasping, you do not have the view. And we'll say the long life, it's not a long life prayer. Lama Tsongkhapa hasn't been around for quite some time. Prayer for the flourishing of Jit Tsongkhapa's teachings. I wish it was imagine that. Imagine if we could just rewind and be in the cave with Lama Tsongkhapa and his students, right? In that cave, right? So think in these terms, and when we call upon Lama Tsongkhapa is a Buddha. Lama Tsongkhapa shows up. When we say, Lama Tsongkhapa, please come help us, he shows. We just don't have the karma to see it, unfortunately, because since beginningless time, we've grasped at ourselves as being inherently existent, and because of that have cherished ourselves more than others. So we don't see him. Though he's the father, producer of all conquer, as a conqueror's son, he produced the thought of upholding the conqueror's dharma in infinite worlds. Through this truth, may the conqueror Losang's teachings flourish. When in the presence of Buddha Indra-Ketu, he made his vow, the conqueror and his offspring. Praise his powerful courage. Through this truth, may the conqueror Losang's teachings flourish. That the lineage of pure view and conduct might spread, he offered a white crystal rosary to the sage who gave him a conch and prophesied. Through this truth, may the conqueror Losang's teachings flourish. His pure view, free of eternity or destruction, his pure meditation, cleansed of dark fading and fog, his pure conduct, practiced according to the conqueror's orders, may the conqueror Losang's teachings flourish. Learned since he extensively sought out learning, reverend, rightly applying it to himself, good, directing all for sentient beings in the doctrine, may the conqueror Losang's teachings flourish. Through being sure that all scriptures, definitive and interpretive, were without contradiction, advice for one person's practice, he stopped all misconduct, may the conqueror Losang's teachings flourish. Listening to the explanations of the three Pitakas, realized teachings, practice of the three highest higher trainings, his skilled and accomplished life story is amazing, may the conqueror Losang's teachings flourish. Outwardly calmed and subdued by the hearer's conduct, inwardly trusting in the two stages practice, he allied without clash the good paths of Sutra and Tantra, may the conqueror Losang's teachings flourish. Combining voidness explained as the causal vehicle with great bliss achieved by method, the effect vehicle, hard essence of 80,000 Dharma bundles, may the conqueror Losang's teachings flourish. By the power of ocean of oath-bound doctrine protectors, like the main guardians of the three beings past, the quick-acting Lord Vaishravana, Karmayana, may the conqueror Losang's teachings flourish. In short, by the lasting of glorious gurus' lives, by the earth being full of good, learned, reverend holders of the teaching, and by the increase of power of its patrons, may the conqueror Losang's teachings flourish. I had to laugh. It said, you gave a conch and prophesized. We were doing some debate. We were debating white conch. That's why I chuckled during that part. It was okay. Concluding mandala offering and dedication prayer. As soon as I find it. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. I dedicate whatever virtues I've collected for the benefit of the teachings and of all sentient beings. And in particular, for the essential teachings of Venerable Zanjapa to shine forever, I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. And as always, I just want to thank Khenser Geshe Wandak for appearing in this world and teaching us so clearly. Any mistakes that I've made, I didn't mean to. If I did, may they be purified by the mantra of Vajrasattva. Sorry, I have the hiccups. We'll see how this goes. Purified by the mantra of Vajrasattva, imagining Vajrasattva in the space in front of us as inseparable from our root Lama, and imagining, of course, that we're here with all sentient beings. We established that at the beginning of the teaching and established why very well, I think. So we're bring them here so that you can have an enjoyment body and an emanation body. So bring them all here and just imagine that everyone is seeing Vajrasattva in the space in front of us, inseparable from their root Lama. And if, just imagine that it's your root Lama they're getting to see Vajrasattva inseparable from. This is how we connect. Make it that. Make it that they're all seeing Vajrasattva inseparable from your root Lama. And imagining that white, red, and blue light rays and nectars are showering down on you and all sentient beings and transforming into white Oms, red Ahs, and blue Homs, and purifying your body, speech, and mind, respectively. Om Benza Satta, Samaya Manupalaya, Benza Satta, Zeno Bajita, Dida Meva, Vazutogaya Meva, Zubugaya Meva, Anaraja Meva, Zavazidi Meva, Rajasawa Kamasuja, Mekijam Chion Kuru Hom, Ha, Bhagavan, Zavatakata, Benza Memoka, Benza Baba, Mahasamaya Sapa, Om. May we always be protected by Paul and Lamo. Rama Jojo Rama Dunjo Kalarajemo Ramo Ajadaja Dunjo Rulu Hunjo Rama Jojo Rama Dunjo Kalarajemo Ramo Ajadaja Dunjo Rulu Hunjo Rama Jojo Rama Dunjo Kalarajemo Ramo Ajadaja Dunjo Rulu Hunjo Rama Jojo Rama Dunjo Kalarajemo Rama Ajadaja Dunjo Rulu Hunjo Rama Jojo Rama Dunjo Kalarajemo Rama Ajadaja Dunjo Rulu Hunjo Rama Jojo Rama Dunjo Kalarajemo Rama Ajadaja Dunjo Rulu Hunjo Rama Jojo Rama Dunjo Kalarajemo Rama Ajadaja Dunjo Rulu Hunjo. And that's Rinpoche's Palden Lamo Tanka. I just flipped the thing up for y'all to see. So that's Palden Lamo, the wrathful emanation of Tara, and that's Rinpoche's Tanka. He gave to me. It's not Rinpoche's. He gave it to me. But it was his, and yeah, feel really fortunate. Anybody who's having any problems with connecting with the Dharma may be purified through the Drapasundri mantra, the mantra of the three wrathful protectors. Om Vajrapani Hari Griva Garuda Om Ved. And I do this because Rinpoche found this an important initiation out of nowhere to do for us at the end of his life. So the Drapasundri seems to be of some relevance and importance. So I try to then share that mantra with you. I dedicate all this virtue. So it's Vajrapani, Haryagriva, and Garuda are the three wrathful deities there. I dedicate all this virtue to emulate the knowledge of the hero Manjushri and likewise Samantabhadra as well, with whatever dedication is praised as supreme by all the conquerors who traverse 3 times. I also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deeds. In the pure land surrounded by snowy mountains, you are the source of all benefit and happiness for beings, all powerful. Avalokiteshvara, Tenzin Gyatso, His Holiness, the 14th Dalai Lama, may you stay until samsara's end. And now just a supplication to Namgyo Khenser Geshe Wandak Rinpoche, written by me on March 6, 2023, 1 year after his passing. A complex yogi poses as a simple monk. Homage to Khenso Geshe Wandak Rinpoche, our precious spiritual friend who is inseparable from Aryatara. I fully prostrate, covering as many atoms of the earth as possible to your pure body, speech, mind, and enlightened activities. I offer to you drinking water, bathing water, flowers and incense, candles and scented water, food and music, purified by Om 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 Om. The rarity of having 1 million wish-fulfilling gems is a common occurrence compared to meeting with a holy teacher like you who placed the complete path to Buddhahood in our childlike hands. Just like Atisha, who came to Tibet with a lamp to dispel the darkness of ignorance, you, kind abbot, arrived in the West with a lineage purer than a diamond and begged us never to be satisfied with partial instructions. The teachings of the extensive deeds and profound view lineages flowed from your lips like nectar for our ears that elucidated the teachings for beings of 3 capacities. Now that sound has stopped. All composite things are impermanent. You told us that all your teachers passed away and understood the sadness in treating us to continue our studies. The Buddha does not wash away the negativities of being, nor does he remove their miseries by his hands. His spiritual realizations are not transferred to them. It is by teaching the truth of suchness that beings are liberated. We are not prepared to take this difficult journey to the highest goodness of Buddhahood without your continued guidance. The sadness in our hearts would be too overwhelming. May you swiftly return to this world and take care of us in all of our lives, wherever we may be, never leaving our hearts and crowns. May all sentient beings perfectly realize renunciation, bodhicitta, and the correct view of emptiness so they know who you really are. All right. Thank you so much, everybody. Please, please read Lamrim Chemo, read Jewel Ornament for Liberation by Gampopa, read anything that you can that can change your mind from the kind of mind that most of us have, that grasps at things, grasps at reality as it appears, as having intrinsic existence, and cherishes oneself more than others, to a mind that is the exact opposite, that sees everything as having lack of inherent existence and that cherishes others. So hopefully we can transform our minds this week to being more virtuous, because that's what Lord Atisha meant when he would say that to folks. I hope your mind is virtuous today. Thank you. See ya. And tomorrow too.